One of the first big moves that Eric makes is to start taping WCW at Disney to cut costs and give the show what he would call a big look with the Disney flyover to start the show. And he's trying to position the show, or the company, WCW rather, to not look second best. And he feels like a Disney partnership would lend WCW some much needed credibility at the time. And while he's down in Orlando with these tapings with Disney, Flair helps Bischoff set up a meeting with Hulk Hogan. And this is less than a year away from Hogan's last shot with the WWF. And they're right in the middle of Vince McMahon's steroid trial. What was your reaction when you hear about Bischoff having a meeting with, Hulk Hogan?
Inevitable. As much work as was being done in Florida, with Hogan living there, he didn't have to get on an airplane and fly with a bad back. He's had a bad back that long. It was convenient for him to make a commitment on time, and it could be a difference maker. It gives your brand instant credibility to hire someone the stature of Hulk Hogan, no matter if he was in his prime, after his prime, before his prime, no matter what. He was famous. He was over. And I'm sure that when Rick and Hogan were talking, they were talking about working with each other. And why wouldn't they? So there's a lot of options for Hogan to do, and including turn heel, which is magic with Hall and Nash.
Well, before we get there, they do the ticker tape parade for Hogan, and
I saw it.
They set up the big dream match that most people thought should have happened at WrestleMania 8. Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. It happens at Bash at the Beach 94. It's a landmark show for WCW. It really puts them on the map. They do more business than ever before. In hindsight, do you think Vince missed the boat on not doing Hogan Flair at WrestleMania?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason not to do it. That's what I look back at. I look at the two individuals we're speaking of here from a former Booker, a Booker standpoint, creative person standpoint, whatever. And you check all the boxes that are primary for a great attraction, big numbers at the box office, etc. And there's still enough gas in their tanks that if orchestrated correctly, they can still have a very solid, well-executed wrestling match. And so, yeah, there's no reason to not have done it. It's the match everybody wanted to see, but for some reason, sometimes Vince seems to be adamant that he likes to do things his way. And sometimes I believe that he's been guilty, maybe we all have, of not listening to the audience thoroughly enough, because that was the match. And so even though he didn't create it and book it, that was the match. And Vince is going to make the most money out of it. So I'd have booked the damn thing in a heartbeat. And that would have been really easy. A really easy main event for WrestleMania 8 was that.
Well, we're moving around quite a bit here, but eventually it's announced that Bischoff is going to make a bold move, and he's going to put WCW programming head to head on Monday night up against Monday Night Raw with Nitro. When you first hear the news that, hey, we've got real competition, and it's WCW on Monday night, and they're going to be live every week, whereas we're taping shows in advance at this point. What's your take on that? Do you think this is real competition, or is WCW still perpetually going to be the little big brother of the WWF?
I thought the WWF had a massive head start, as they do right now. No company is going to threaten WWE's market share anytime soon. Likely in mine or your lifetime, Conrad, quite frankly. But that's not a sad tale to tell, because there's plenty of money out there, plenty of revenues to earn in the entertainment world that a company like AEW, for example, can enjoy and make significant profits over time. So I think that what were we talking about? Train of thought. I just left. I was thinking about something else down the road.
It's Nitro being announced.
Oh yeah. Here's my issue is this. I question whether they have the in-house personnel to pull it off in a big way. And of course, a lot of that stuff was, David Crockett probably doesn't get enough credit for some of that stuff, because he was one of the big producers there and on-site people. But getting the staff together to do the rigging, the lighting, everything. I didn't know that they were ready to do that because everything had always been on such a smaller scale. And then to be able to do it live every Monday is that's a whole different world. So I didn't know that was going to be as successful as it was. And it was a pleasant surprise, actually, because it made the business look better overall because they had great production values. And the shows look clean and slick. You might not agree with the creative, but hell, that's normal. You can say that of any era, any show. But the show looked good, and I thought that was a step in the right direction for them. So you can tolerate a good-looking show that might not be the greatest creative for a little longer, not forever, but a little longer than you can the other way around.
Eric made a big splash the very first Nitro when he announces that Lex Luger has jumped from the WWF to WCW. What's your take on that when you hear that, hey, we thought we had him, but we don't, he's gone?
Yeah, that was a disappointment. I don't know, Conrad, and I know this sounds shitty for me to say, but I just didn't see what we were losing. Here's what we lost. We lost shock value. We lost the war or the shock value on that night, the surprise factor. That's what we lost because Lex was, hey, look, we tried to get him over. He tried to get himself over here as well. Everybody worked, the Lex Express, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't work. He never got over to the level he should have, or to the level that the money was invested in him to make that happen. So I'm thinking, okay, they beat us in the surprise area, but what did they get out of the situation? Are people going to see the same Lex Luger match they've been seeing for 10 years or so? Probably. So that's how I looked at that thing. But I knew that the antes were being raised, and that Eric was going to be a very aggressive poker player.
Yeah, and that's never more evident than when he becomes lead announcer on Nitro, much like Vince is on Raw. But maybe one of his more controversial decisions, especially at the time, is he's giving away the results of a taped Raw show live on Nitro, so the viewer doesn't have to feel like they're missing anything. If you're an old school guy, you've got to think this is sort of playing dirty, right?
Yeah, a little, sure. But you understand, you get into a fight, you fight to win. I just think it's really ridiculous. And of course, this is, I guess, foreshadowing the NXT and AEW Wednesday night stuff. But, I don't know. I mean, we all know why it wasn't by accident that NXT ended up on the USA Network at exactly the same time as AEW. It was to retard our growth. Big or childish is good. It can always be justified in any verbiage you want. Anyway, there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, and a lot of ways, Your Honor, that you can make a case for either side. The bottom line of it is that it's created more interest on that night than it has been in wrestling and maybe forever on Wednesday nights. And it's giving a lot of talent the opportunity to be seen by more people than they heretofore have been seen. That's a good thing. And I think it's overall good for the business. But it's sad that it's got to be head-to-head because, I don't know how much better it would be for both brands if it wasn't head-to-head, but it is. So you go out and roll your sleeves up, you get to work, and you fight and do what you got to do to make your brand better. So, but that's kind of how I see that matter, on the television side, Connie.
Somewhere around this time, Vince starts to position himself as being in a war with Ted Turner himself. And I've always found that somewhat interesting because Turner was always somewhat hands off when it came to WCW, and Vince presenting himself as the underdog feels like, he's trying to be the baby face and he's trying to get sympathy here. Why is he not positioning himself against Eric Bischoff? Because that dynamic doesn't exist. I mean, Bischoff is, financially a regular guy at this point, by and large, and Ted Turner is a billionaire. So it's just an easier story for Vince to sell to the public and the boys, maybe?
Much easier to have his vendetta, wink, wink, quote unquote, against billionaire Ted than unknown Eric. And also Eric was becoming very prominent on that TV show. and the promos are, caustic at times and a little coarse, heated, effective. And Vince, I don't think he wanted to give him the time of day or acknowledge that he existed. But Ted was okay because Ted was in a comfort zone. Ted wasn't aware of what was being said, nor did do you think he cared? No. So I think that it was a kind of a strategic thing for Vince to do in that regard. He never acknowledged Eric as a star, and as soon as you start mentioning his name, his name identity and his perception increases. So McMahon, the old school, just let it go. He didn't say nothing about it.
Well, the fire continues. The whole mess happens with the Razor Diesel lawsuit. Eric Bischoff was even personally named in the lawsuit. He becomes president of WCW in 97. And by that point, WCW is regularly thumping the WWF in the ratings. And around this time, Bischoff is giving locker room speeches to sort of rally the troops. And one of the things he's pretty routinely talking about, even out in the open, is that his goal is to put Vince McMahon and the WWF out of business. When did you first hear that? And I mean, I know a lot of people say, oh, how dare he? But Vince put a lot of guys out of business. And I'm sure when he first had aspirations of doing that, a lot of the old time promoters thought they were going to put him out of business and that some of his risks weren't going to work. Blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
When do you remember hearing, hey, we're back at it again, and somebody says they're trying to put Vince out?
Well, I think somebody, from the meeting called Meltzer, and Meltzer had it, followed it, reported stories, I recall.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.